Hello everyone, Dr. Polaris here. Well, scary season is upon us once again, and for this episode I just had to cover another cryptid, or perhaps more accurately cryptids, seeing as we're going to be looking at various reports of dog-headed humanoids claimed to be roaming about in the Midwest of the United States, as well as southern Canada. These encompass several related creatures that share many similarities, which include an overall werewolf-like appearance with bipedal postures, hairy coats, and often large body sizes, being said to stand at least 6 feet tall when on their hind legs. These wolfmen have been given several distinctive names over the past preceding 3 decades or so, including the Beast of Bray Road or Bray Road Beast, La Bête de Sept Chutes, and the Michigan Dogman. While there have been reported encounters with such cryptids that date back to the 19th century, they first received widespread public attention during the early 1990s, when a rash of sightings occurred which would come to be known as the Dogman flap. The most notable of such alleged encounters centered on the town of Elkhorn, Wisconsin, and were recorded by journalist, artist, and paranormal researcher Linda Godfrey, a seemingly kind-natured woman who always took these wolfman stories seriously. Linda gathered a whole host of tales from the area, which were collated in her 2003 book, The Beast of Bray Road. Some of the accounts provided by Godfrey apparently dated back to the early 20th century, including one that took place in 1936. A man named Mike Shackleman claimed to have seen a, quote, talking half-wolf, half-man, unquote, east of Jefferson, Wisconsin, along Highway 18. He was driving down the road when he spotted something in the process of digging into the side of an old indigenous burial mound. The creature was covered in hair, was over 6 feet tall when standing upright, possessed a canine muzzle, and features combining those of a dog and an ape. He described the creature's hands as having a twisted thumb and only 3 fingers. On top of that, he also said that the beast had a rank odour similar to rotting meat. He claimed that he returned to the area the following day, and found that the creature was still there. To his amazement, it uttered a 3-syllable word, which sounded like Gadara. These events were relayed to Godfrey by Mark Shackleman's son Joe, who also produced an illustration of the creature supposedly witnessed by his father. The drawing in question depicts a tall bipedal wolfman with an elongated snout, plantigrade clawed feet, bent wrists, and large dangling hands equipped with sharp claws. However, the most noteworthy reports took place in the late 80s and early 90s, and were provided to Godfrey by an unnamed local freelance journalist, who in turn had heard accounts relayed by a bus driver called Pat Lester. Lester's daughter, Lori Endrizi, claimed to have had a run-in with a mysterious creature in the autumn of 1989 while driving along the rural Bray Road to the east of Elkhorn. As she came round a bend, she saw what she initially thought was a person kneeling or crouching on the side of the road. She slowed down to take a closer look through the passenger side window for about 45 seconds. She was roughly 6 feet away, and described the creature as a muscular beast with grey-brown fur, sharp teeth, pointed triangular ears, glowing yellow eyes, and an elongated canine snout. The beast appeared to be holding some sort of dead animal in its upward-facing hands. It was at this point that Laurie noticed that its fingers were similar to a human's, only covered in hair and terminating in sharp claws. Later, she described the creature as, quote, a wolf or large dog with human characteristics, unquote. Interestingly, Doris Gibson, a teenage neighbour of Lori Endrizi, also claimed to have had a run-in with the Wolfman on Halloween night 1991. Yes, you heard that right. She apparently saw a werewolf-like monster on Halloween. What are the odds? Doris reported that while driving down Bray Road, her right tyre was jolted off the ground, as though she'd rolled over a large object. She stopped to get out of the car and see what it was that she'd hit. As she peered into the darkness, she noticed a large hairy figure moving quickly towards her. Terrified, she rushed back into her car, and as she pulled away, the beast leapt onto the rear of the vehicle. Unable to get a hold onto the wet car exterior, it slid off and disappeared into the night. She returned to the area later that evening while trick-or-treating with another girl, and saw a huge hulking hairy figure further up the road. Meanwhile, another teenager, Tom Britchter, is credited with a couple of 1992 sightings of a shaggy-coated humanoid, the first of which involves the creature colliding with his car, while the second describes how a large hairy animal with a dog-like face was seen towering on its hind legs above a field of 6-foot-tall cornstalks. The beast was also apparently seen by older adults during this initial monster flap, including dairy farmer Mike Etten, who reported a sighting which he claimed occurred in March 1990. Although he'd been drinking around the time of the incident, Etten was convinced that he'd seen a dog-like beast near the Bray Road Hospital Road intersection, though it was much larger than an average pet. He described it as, quote, sitting like a raccoon, unquote, using its front paws to hold on to a dead animal that it was eating. As he passed by, the beast looked at him, and Etten saw that it had a thick, wide snout shorter than a dog's muzzle. Its legs were thick and covered in dark hair. Given that so many of these reports stem from teenagers, either on or close to Halloween, this suggests that the scary stories told by local Elkhorn high schoolers were crucial in developing the legend of the Bray Road beast. Again, given that these encounters describe creatures that look very much like typical depictions of werewolves, as seen in movies, books, and Halloween costumes, pop culture influence must have played some role in the formation of the beast as well. Indeed, films starring werewolves were fairly prominent during the 1980s, including Teen Wolf, The Howling, An American Werewolf in London, and Silver Bullet. A very similar type of creature, known as the Michigan Dogman, has been reported from the area surrounding Wexford County, Michigan. Sightings of this beast are also said to go back to the 19th century, although material on these is pretty hard to come by. However, as noted by Darren Naish, a crucial component that almost certainly kicked off the modern conception of the Dogman was the release of a spoken word type song by local musician Steve Cook called The Legend. First played on Michigan Public Radio in 1987, the song related a series of supposedly real encounters with the Dogman that stretched back many decades, seemingly giving the beast an extensive history that long predated the sightings of the late 80s and 90s. I can't play any of the song in this video, otherwise I'll be copyright claimed back to the Stone Age, but I can give you my own rendition of the lyrics. Here goes. A cool summer morning in early June is when the legend began, at a nameless logging camp in Wexford County where the Manistee River ran. 11 lumberjacks near the Garland Swamp found an animal they thought was a dog. In a playful mood, they chased it round till it ran inside a hollow log. A logger named Johnson grabbed him a stick and poked around inside. Then the thing let out an unearthly scream and came out and stood upright. None of those men ever said very much about whatever happened then. Then in the summer of '87 near Luther it happened again. At a cabin in the woods it looked like maybe someone had tried to break in. There were cuts around the doors that could only have been made by very sharp teeth and claws. He didn't wear shoes because he didn't have feet. He walked on just 2 paws. Well, you get the picture. Although Cook's song seemed to suggest a longer history of Dogman sightings in the region, it was played as an April Fool's Day gag, with all of the encounters in it being made up. After releasing the legend, Cook had received more than 100 reports of the creature's existence, with these people apparently being unaware that the song was always meant as a joke. The songwriter has maintained his skepticism about the plausibility of a real Dogman, stating that, quote, I'm tremendously skeptical because I've sort of seen the way folklore becomes built from the creation of this song to what it's turned into, but I do believe people who think they saw something really did see something. I also think the Dogman provides them with an avenue to explain what they couldn't explain for themselves, unquote. This whole situation is an interesting example of the development and evolution of local folklore in real time, with newspaper and TV coverage of the Michigan Dogman and the Beast of Bray Road helping to spread awareness of these mystery beasts to a wider audience, further building on the legend. Later, another famous piece of supposed evidence that was held up to support the existence of these werewolf-like humanoids was the so-called Gable Dogman film. In 2007, a digital copy of an 8mm film surfaced on the internet, dubbed the Gable film because of a small paper tag attached to the box containing the film reel. It quickly attained viral status among cryptozoology enthusiasts. The entire film is about 3.5 minutes long, and appears to have been shot in the mid to late 70s, due to the clothing and hairstyles of the people seen in the footage. The early scenes show pretty standard activities that you'd expect from a home movie, including kids riding snowmobiles, a man chopping wood, and a scene of the family dog, in this case a German Shepherd. However, towards the end of the film, the camera operator, who appears to be a young boy, is shooting from inside a moving vehicle travelling along a dirt road, when he spots what appears to be a hairy, human-sized quadrupedal creature standing near the side of the track. The creature quickly bounds towards the car for a few seconds and briefly disappears from view before its open mouth, complete with sharp wolf-like teeth, flashes in front of the camera just as the film ends. The footage is surprisingly creepy, with many people who saw it believing that it provided firm evidence for the Dogman's existence. The man who brought the Gable footage to light was Mike Agrusa, who claimed to have obtained it via an estate sale before sending copies to paranormal researchers such as Linda Godfrey. However, as revealed in the 2010 edition of the show Monster Quest, the footage was shown to have been a cleverly made creative hoax. Mike Agrusa himself appeared in the Dogman episode, revealing that he used an 8mm camera to create the impression that the film had been shot in the 70s, while Agrusa had also worn a baggy ghillie suit while bounding around on all fours in order to portray the beast. It turns out that the Gable film was also produced as a collaboration between Agrusa and Steve Cook, the musician behind the aforementioned The Legend song. Apparently, as CD sales of his song began to flag, Cook devised a new way of keeping the Dogman relevant. The final product is pretty well made, and if nothing else should get high praise for being effectively detailed and off-putting. Another notoriously creepy piece of evidence put forward to bolster the claim of North American dog-headed humanoids is the La Bête de Sept Chutes photo, taken in Quebec at the Le Parc de Sept Chutes in June 2005 by a French-speaking dump truck operator named Larry. The image shows an area of woodland on the banks of a large river. It's a pretty innocuous looking image, except when you look into the bottom right hand corner of the photo, where, shrouded among foliage, a large mysterious creature can be glimpsed lurking in the shadows. The beast appears to be a roughly human-sized, dog-faced entity covered in dark brown fur. The crown of the head is tall, rather domed in shape, and is seemingly reddish in colour, somewhat resembling the pointed, powerfully constructed scalp of a gorilla. The creature also seems to be holding a small light-coloured object, which is being pressed tight against its body. It's been suggested that the small object carried by the creature is actually an unfortunate pet dog, or perhaps a young pig about to become the beast's next meal. This would then apparently match up well with the aforementioned accounts of Midwest werewolf-like cryptids seen holding or feeding on carrion. This remarkably creepy-looking beast man was apparently not noticed by Larry when he took the image, only realising its presence later when he was going through his photos. Larry returned to the site several times with his partner, although neither had any further encounters with the beast. So just what the hell could this thing be? Many large animals native to the area can be immediately ruled out by the creature's bipedal posture. Black bears often do stand up and even walk on their hind legs, although the beast's arms and apparent shoulders rule out an ursine identity. It's also been suggested that the cryptid may have been an escaped gorilla, given the similarities of its fur colour and domed head. However, I'm pretty sure that a large escaped zoo animal would have at least made the local Quebec news in 2005, and I haven't been able to find any remotely relevant information about this online. The beast's supposedly elongated snout also doesn't look anything like the robust jaws of a gorilla, as seen in this pretty hilarious drawing of what the creature's face is meant to look like. I love how the artist has turned such an ominous monster into a goofy-looking friendly guy who wouldn't be out of place in Harry and the Hendersons or something. There have also been suggestions that the beast, as well as the other Dogman cryptids, may be some kind of undiscovered large mammal endemic to North America. Linda Godfrey indicated that these creatures might be wolf-like canines that have developed more bipedal stances as a response to the spread of grassland habitats. There's currently no evidence of this whatsoever, with the grasping forelimbs and long fingers reported in accounts of Dogman-type entities being very uncanid-like. Given this fact, a slightly more interesting theory recorded by Lauren Coleman and Patrick Weege in their book The Field Guide to Bigfoot is that these werewolf-like cryptids are not canines at all, but are instead large bipedal baboon or mandrill-like primates. This would seem to match the reconstruction of La Bête de Sept Chutes covered earlier, as well as the supposedly dog-like faces that these creatures are said to possess. Honestly, a 6-foot-tall bipedal baboon sounds even more intimidating to me than a werewolf-type beast. Even though fossil relatives of baboons and macaques show that these primates were more widespread during the Pliocene and Pleistocene, none have ever been found in North America. In the case of the set shoot's dog/monkey man, at least, I agree with Darren Naish's interpretation that what we're seeing here is best explained as a case of pareidolia. If we take another careful look at the photo, it's far more likely that the quote-unquote beast is actually a blonde-haired, possibly female hiker or photographer, as seen from behind. The back of their head and light-coloured hair accounts for the alleged small dog carried by the creature. Below, we can just about make out the top of a light brown backpack, while the dark brown fur of the beast would simply be the hiker's heavy overcoat. The arms of this person are held up above their head, forming the beast's arms and apparent shoulders, while their white gloves form the beast's neck. They also seem to be holding aloft a camera, perhaps attached to a tripod, with the elongated snout of the mystery animal simply being the camera lens, while the reddish domed scalp may be some kind of cover to shield the equipment from the weather. Also, when observing the photo in its original state, it shows that Larry was standing pretty far away from and high above the figure in question. When combined with the shady area in which the camera person is positioned, in combination with the incredibly zoomed in edits of the image circulating online, this is yet another example of what I like to call the close encounters of the blurred kind effect. So what's to be made of America's werewolf-like cryptids? I'm convinced that what's being described here are interesting examples of constantly evolving local folklore, with teenagers and young people playing an important role in the spread and creation of deliberately fun, scary stories. Some of the initial encounters with the beast may have been influenced by sightings of black bears afflicted with mange, which can make the animals look remarkably alien and uncanny, especially if seen at night while standing bipedally. These tales spread to other members of the community centered in and around Elkhorn, Wisconsin, as well as in the surrounds of Wexford County, Michigan. Influenced by the prominence of werewolves in 80s pop culture and as mainstays of Halloween, as well as songs such as Steve Cook's The Legend, stories of bipedal wolf or dog-headed humanoids were picked up both by the press and researchers such as Linda Godfrey, helping to create a widely reported phenomenon. The popularity of these dogmen gave rise to clever and creative work such as the Gable footage, while also being tied to wonderfully creepy photos like that of the Beast of Set Shoots. Seriously, this has now become my favourite image of a purported cryptid, seeing as you can really imagine a bunch of anatomical features even at a quick glance. Like the Yeti, which I covered in a recent episode, I regard dogman-type cryptids as important cultural beasts tied to a specific area or region, helping people to make sense of the strange and the unexplained. Indeed, as Darren Naish and Blake Smith discussed on an episode of the Monster Talk podcast last year, accounts of the Dogman represent a continuing evolution of older stories concerning werewolves, lycanthropy, and human-animal hybrids that have been circulating for millennia. The internet now has taken up the mantle of a global campfire, allowing what were once very localized folkloric elements to spread worldwide, such that now there are even small but serious bands of Bigfoot hunters in the UK of all places. So just remember to watch out for 6-foot-tall bipedal baboons lurking in the undergrowth while you're out trick-or-treating this year. Thanks for watching, everyone. The next episode will be covering a topic far scarier than any wolf-headed humanoid: unresolved taxonomy. In particular that of the Enantiornithes, the highly diverse and successful so-called opposite birds that thrived during the Cretaceous period. See you again soon. Cheerio.